Welcome to this Capital Conference session for Contest Basics in Accounting. Our presenter today is Susan Mathews. Many of you know Susan from her long and successful history of teaching accounting. She was one of our amazing UIL Sponsor Excellence Award winners. She is a staple side at the state meet. Even after her retirement, she has continued her involvement of assisting and helping Laverne put these sessions together. So we will have some more accounting sessions later in the fall that we had intended that we had to postpone. We also have some accounting sessions on the resources that we used last year. So those are also on that Capital Conference online page. So feel free to reference those as well. And we'll keep you updated about the postponed accounting session that we will put together later this summer, probably earlier in the fall. So, but welcome to Accounting Contest Basics. Susan, thank you for being here and stepping in and being willing to share your knowledge and wisdom with all of these great accounting coaches today.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Stevens. I do appreciate it. And hello to everyone. I may have met some of you in the past, but as I told Dr. Stevens, it's been a while since I've seen a lot of faces, so I probably don't remember you. But anyway, I'm going to share with you first. We're going to do some basics. Just a quick overview of the contest. We'll do a little simple problem solving demo that might give you some help on doing other bigger problems. And then we'll go over some of the coaching strategies that were successful for me when I was a coach and in your shoes. So we're going to start with a basic overview of the contest. There is a digital handout that is called the Mathews Accounting Basics Reference. It will give you many of the important facts and links to the documents that are covered in this overview, and you'll be able to locate those on the UIL website later on if you haven't been able to do that yet. But excuse me, I'm trying to operate off two computers, and so I'm doing a little bit of a mess here. Hang on just a minute. Okay. So to find the rules for UIL Academics, you can just go right to the UIL Academic website. You can go up to policies, and down at the bottom, you will find the academic rules for all of the contests. And please, I do know that most of these slides do say 2020 to 2021. The UIL website will be updated later on this year, or later on this summer. So the screens, when you get to them, might actually say 21 to 22 when they get their final update. When you get to the academic policy and constitution for the contest rules, you will see an overview of the basic rules. You'll see the sections on each of the meets, and then you will find the section for the accounting. If you're a new coach, the more you read, the better understanding you will have of how this whole process works. Probably kind of dry reading, but understanding how they have this system set up will make it a lot easier for you in the long run when you're trying to get your logistics going. So I highly encourage you to take the time to read these documents whenever you can. There is also on the UIL academic website a UIL accounting handbook. And definitely it is essential reading, and it'd be a good idea if you got your students to read it as well, because they're very good at picking up on some of the details that we might miss reading. So it's a really good idea to get your students to do that as well. And that is easily available if you go to the academic website, go to resources and handbooks and manuals, and you'll be able to see that right there. One of the things that we do want to make sure that everybody understands is the basic rules and overview for the contest. It is a written exam. If you have not seen one yet, hopefully you'll take the time to go look at one this afternoon. 80 objective questions, accounting theory, and application of theory. The students have 1 hour to complete the test in. The test is awarded 5 points for each correct answer. There are no points deducted for wrong answers. Some questions do have 1, 2, or 3 stars for getting the correct answer. You also get bonus points based on the number of stars. The contest has an individual component and a team competition. Although you don't take the test as a group, your school can enter 1, 2, 3, or 4 people at the meet. You must have 3 to make a team. You still compete individually, but if you have 3, then you also are competing as a team. If you have 4, the top 3 scores will actually make up your team score. At each contest, the answer sheets are graded, they're scored. There's a verification period where you can make sure that the scoring was correct. And that's an important time for you to stress to your students to actually look at the grading to make sure that there wasn't something that was incorrectly marked. Individuals who place first, second, and third place will move on, and the first place team and the wild card team will advance to the next level of competition. The contest schedule is also posted on the UIL academic website. The 2020 schedule is there for your district, region, and state meet, which hopefully everything will be back to normal this year and everyone will be able to attend those in person. And you can get to that contest schedule by going to the academic website and just going to calendar, and then there'll be a PDF there that you can download. And I do realize I'm kind of covering this quickly. I don't know how many of you are real familiar with these websites and how many of you are not, but by seeing as much as possible, then at least it will entice you to go out there and to look at this. There also is an area that probably was one of the most confusing to me when I first started coaching, the conflict pattern. The conflict pattern helps you as a coach to advise your students which contests they can compete in without there being any issues or conflicts of times. The district level, those meets sometimes are spread over more time. And so it's not as difficult for your students to participate in several academic events. So they can, but if they advance in more than one academic event, they may encounter some conflicts with the day and the time at the regional and the state meet. So you always have to keep that in mind whenever you're working with your students to make sure that they realize that there could be some conflict. So it's a good to know in advance which conflicts exist, but you also want to encourage them to try as many contests as they would like to. The academic conflict pattern is a visual. It's pretty easy to look at. Most of the meets are broken up into different sessions. And then, of course, you have to just look and see if the contest that you're competing in is going to conflict with any other events that are offered maybe in that same time. An example is, let's say a student wants to participate in UIL accounting. And if they want to participate in any of these other contests, they will experience conflicts at region and state. They might not at district. So again, they may compete in other events at district, but if they advance in more than one, they may have to be choosing. So it's really good for coaches to be pretty familiar with that conflict pattern and at least understand how it works. So of course it is available on the UIL website underneath academic resources and coordinator resources. So the one that's there is an old one, but they'll have it updated soon. Textbooks. So of course, we all like to know what textbooks are being used. It's all coming from the Accounting 1 textbooks. The publishers that are used are the Cengage Learning, which is your Southwestern, or the Glencoe McGraw-Hill. So those 2 books are where you need to be working from. They're pretty similar, but sometimes you might find a little bit that's different in each one. So you know what books to use, so what material will specifically be covered. To make that a little bit easier for you, there is provided on Laverne's website, which we will get to in a few minutes, a UIL accounting schedule of concepts. This list is not all inclusive, but it's a very good list to operate off of. I've used it for many years. The purpose of the list is to give you a general idea of what will be included at the invitational and district levels. And then there's a second part of the list that shows what would be added when you advance to region. And then, of course, the last step if you get to state. Very good list to look at, very good information for you when you're trying to determine what it is that you want to start working on with your students. And again, it is available on Laverne's website, and that link to her website is on the UIL website as well. If you go to her website, go to UIL Accounting Contest and scroll down, then you will actually find the link for the PDF for the UIL Accounting Concepts list. Very good list, again, that you'll want to refer to. It is also part of the digital handout for this session. And you want to refer to this list, just to make sure your students are prepared for the level that you're going to go to. On this schedule of concept, there is one area that on the state level, there's a return on stockholders' equity, and that formula is actually provided on the schedule of concepts for everyone. So you know what books to use, you know what kind of material will be on the test. Now, what will that test actually look like? Well, the test will have no choice numeric, there'll be yes, no questions, there'll be debit, credit questions, there'll be matching questions, true, false, increase, decrease, multiple choice questions, standalone theory or math computations, series of multiple choice that are connected to a group of data, either on the same page or in a table, multiple column, multiple choice, and then of course the layout problems that use a table of data, which are probably the most fun for the students. A big variety, some of the sections kids find the ones that they like the best, don't have to work the test in any specific order. Probably would want to finish one group before you started another group because they are connected. The famous question, so is my calculator allowed? That's probably been discussed more than any other thing when it gets to the accounting contest. So the calculator is an important part of the contest, but we don't have to use something like this. So the students will be happy to know. You might show them this and ask them if they would like to use one of these, but they probably won't. In the accounting handbook, it will specifically spell out the basic 4-function calculator that is allowed to be used for the accounting contest. It's a very basic calculator. You want to make sure that your students practice with the same calculator that they're going to be using in the contest, because you don't want them to have to make any kind of adjustments that day. There are times when a student's calculator is disallowed. And if that happens at contest, someone can give the student a different calculator. The contest director will hold the calculator till the end of the meet and then return it after the testing hour. There is a time when calculators are checked, and they should be checked at all levels at all meets. It's a process the students need to be familiar with. So could they use the calculator on their cell phone or their smartwatch? No, they cannot. So please make them understand they should not even take any electronic devices into the contest room. At the state level, they'll actually have to surrender those things because they can't have them available. So we don't want those kinds of things in the testing room, but we definitely do want the coaches to be there, because the coaches are great volunteers. They are what make most of these contests happen as smoothly as they do. To have a successful meet, we definitely have to depend on the volunteers. And that's even all the way down to the invitational meets, the district meets, and the region meets. So not just the state meet. But in fact, because the volunteers are so important, The handbook does state that if your team is advancing to the region and state meet, you will need to provide a qualified grader to score papers, unless there's a reason and you're excused by the contest director. Hopefully it's the accounting coach, but sometimes it can't be, because that person sometimes has to wear more than one hat, but still they will have to provide a qualified grader that would be able to help with the grading. It takes a while to get things graded, so we need as many volunteers as possible. And if you do advance to the state meet, they actually have added in the state meet book, which was added in 2018 and 19, that after the regional meet, every coach of a state contestant, whether the contestant is competing as an individual or as a team member, they have to respond to the state contest director by email as outlined in a memo from the accounting state contest director that will be posted on the UIL website. Mainly the reason for this is because there's a lot of communication that needs to take place. As a coach of a state contestant, there will be information that you'll need to know, and there'll be information that your contest director needs to know. That memo will require you to provide by email confirmation that you've read the UIL Accounting Handbook. So again, by now, hopefully you and your students have read it. Confirm that you and your students have read and understand the memo that you're going to get, because there'll be a lot of logistical information in there. If your school is sending a team, your school is required to provide a grader, and they'll want you to actually email the name of your school's grader. All coaches will be asked to volunteer to help, either as a conference assistant or inspect calculators, review the contest materials, and verify the key or grade. So depending on what it is that you like to do, it's your choice, and we definitely will need everyone to volunteer. Different duties, they're all explained to you. You don't have to have any experience. You'll be told exactly what it is that you need to do. A little funny story, and I can't see your faces because my screen's got too many things on it. But when I took my students the first year to, when I had a team that first advanced to state, which was many, many, many years ago, I still was not as informed as I should have been, because I was still trying to learn the websites and just figure out what I was doing. So I volunteered to review the contest material. And I'll never forget, we review the contest material while the students are in the testing room. And as we're reviewing the test that they're taking, I'm just getting a really unhappy feeling inside, because I knew at that point that my students were not as prepared as they should have been. Being a new coach, I had not been coaching very many years. I just had not acclimated myself to as much of the material as I could have. I knew the logistics of the contest, but I will tell you, when my kids came out, their looks on their faces were like, what just happened to us? So needless to say, we didn't perform excessively well at the first state meet, but we did learn a lot. And as a coach, I learned a lot. So needless to say, I spent a lot of time the next school year making sure that they were much better prepared. I thought it was interesting that that's what I volunteered for the first state meet that I attended. So another major change, and a lot of the reasons for a lot of this information that they ask for in the memo, is that the coaches meetings at the state meet, which were typically held the day before the contest, have been eliminated. So this memo that you get and this back and forth correspondence of information that you need to provide is essential. So hopefully you'll remember some of the things that we've shared with you, some of the details. But of course, those whose minds are a little bit overflowing with everything else that's going on in your life, there are two websites that you can refer to. The UIL academic website, which we have referred to several times during this presentation. And also that's maintained by the UIL State Office in Austin. There's also a second website that's maintained by Laverne, and it is a great website and has lots of different information that's not really available on the UIL website. So you want to become familiar with both of them. They both are a wealth of information for you, and you want to be familiar so you know where to go when it is that you need to look up something. Laverne's website will have an area for the UIL Accounting Contest. So when school starts, when should you start your accounting UIL? Well, should you start the first day of school? If you have returning students and you've been coaching for a little while, you probably are going to, because they are going to be eager. They are so eager when school starts. If they have done this in the past, they're ready to get started. Waiting until January is probably not a good idea, because 5 months have already passed and everybody else has already been working. So you definitely want to get started. Student activity conferences are a good thing to try to plan to attend in the fall. Really good experience for the kids and good information for the teachers. So when do you start? That's totally up to you. Of course, the sooner the better. One of the easiest ways to get started is on Laverne's website. She has archived exams. She's got the exam on there. She's got the answer sheet on there. She's got the key on there. There's so much that's available already prepared that you could just print out. All you could do is open them up, print them. It's one of the best ways to practice for the contest. And we're going to look at some other ones, other ways for you to do practice things with your kids. Also, you're going to have some kids, or I suspect you will. I had one very inquisitive young man, and they're curious about their competition. Laverne's website has a section on state contest statistics, and it's a really great place to go. Have your students go, let them look, let them see the statistics from the past state meets so they can see what their competition is all about. I mean, it's divided up by the different classes. Each conference is separate, so it's really a great thing for your students to see what it is. They can investigate their competition. They can see what it is that they need to strive for if they want to be successful, or at least be competitive. The archived exams are, of course, one way you can start preparing your students to practice, but you also will probably want to buy some additional resources or prepare resources of your own. You can purchase study materials very easily from the UIL academic website. Under resources for additional resources, you'll be able to find 3 different places that you can get different study materials for the contest. So there are different vendors. I've bought stuff from all of them in the past. They're all useful. They're all great materials. And then on Laverne's website, she also has some other materials that are available that are of great benefit. This year, and she does this most years, she'll have detailed solutions for the prior year's district meet. The detailed solution that you purchase won't have the test itself, and that's not available till later in the year. So part of the digital handouts for this session will have a copy of the 2021 district test along with the key. So you want to make sure that you grab those and hang on to them so that when you get this detailed solution, which is really good for your students to be able to see how things are worked, gives them an idea of way to attack problems. So again, you want to make sure that you look at the digital handouts that are available for you. So I will pause for a moment because I know I talk a lot. And is there anybody that has any questions? I see a comment. Yes, I agree with you. The archived exams are a very good resource, and we are very fortunate that she provides all those for us. Easy to get to as well. Okay, so the next section that we're going to go to is the problem-solving demo. This is a real basic problem-solving demo. It's a good example to show your students, to maybe guide them in how to do things. Of course, they can't do it so neatly and orderly. This sample problem is also part of your digital handout, so you'll have a copy of it if you haven't been able to get to those yet. So this is a sample problem from a 2016 district test, and it's all about assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, and what their balances are, beginning of the year, end of the year, and the net income or the net loss. So one of the things, of course, that we tell our students is always to, write down everything you know, and then see what it is that you need to figure out. So to work this one, probably the best thing to do is to set it up. Of course, they're not going to draw these boxes, but get a format set up. Go back to your basic accounting question. There are different ways that you could set up this problem. There's not just one way that the students could do it. There are a lot of different ways, but you do want them to set it up in a format that would work for them. And then you always want them to start by writing down what they know and do it as they read the problem. So they don't have to keep rereading the problem. Just start at the beginning of the problem, write down everything that you know. So in this problem, it started off and it said at the beginning of the year, the physical assets were $87,428. So that you would go and write down beginning of the year what your assets were. The next thing the problem told you were that during the year, the assets increased by $12,065. So during the year, we had an increase, so we just put the plus. Liabilities decreased by $1,975. So we can go underneath liabilities and write down their decrease. It said at the end of the year, the liabilities totaled $19,645. So now we know the end of the year. Tells us the owners made withdrawals of $2,000. Well, we know that that is going to make owner's equity go down during the year. There was an investment of $8,000 in the business during the year. We know that will increase owner's equity. So we add the $8,000 during the year. We can now start looking for a row or a column with enough information to start solving. And we can already see that the assets, we should be able to solve for the ending. And it doesn't matter if you start with ending or beginning, it doesn't make any difference. We can solve for the ending assets and we can solve for the beginning liabilities fairly easy. So we would take and do that calculation. Beginning assets plus what we're added will give us our ending. On the liabilities, we know the ending, we know what they decreased. So you would want to do reverse addition, or you're working in the reverse direction. I always tell the kids to use backwards math. It drove them crazy when I said it, but it kind of stuck with them. So I just told them, I said, if you're going from the end to the beginning, then just change your math sign. So you're going to do backwards math. So now we can solve for our beginning liabilities. And then we now can look at the row and we can solve for the beginning owner's equity, because we know that our assets equal our liabilities plus our owner's equity. So we can do simple subtraction, go back to algebra, solve for the unknown. And then we know our ending owner's equity is also very easy to solve because we have the beginning and we have the ending assets, the ending liabilities, so we can solve for the ending owner's equity. So now we have solved for question 18, we've solved for question 19, and now we need to go ahead and solve for the only thing that's not known yet is the net income or the net loss. So we know we're going to take our beginning owner's equity, subtract our withdrawals, and add our owner's contributions. And you want to stop there and you want to look at your calculator, because is the amount that's on your calculator greater or less than the ending owner's equity? Because you should be able to decide now if you're going to have a net income or a net loss. And in this problem, by doing the calculation, you will come up that you have a net income of $8,040. And that would be your answer to question 20. So again, it's not, your kids aren't going to do it in such an organized fashion, but they probably are still going to go about it pretty much like this if they are writing down what they know, and then they will see what it is that they need to figure out at the end. So if you are wanting more information, or if you have specific questions, you always can email Laverne. She is always more than helpful. I have emailed her through the years as a coach, asking her to explain a question to me from a test that I just was working the wrong way or reading the wrong way. She has always been more than helpful to send back information and answer your questions with a lot of detail. And you also should email her if you want to be added to the UIL Accounting Coaches database. Give her your name and the city and the name of your school, and then you'll be included in generic emails that come out. So if there are any questions now, I'm looking at the chat window and I don't see any. So if you have a question, of course, feel free to put it out there or send it in to Laverne. And I am going to change PowerPoints for just a minute. So I'm going to stop sharing. Well, I don't think I really stopped sharing, did I? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to change hats, and now I'm going to share some of the things that I used as a coach. And this is the part, the course, that I think is a lot more fun, because working with the kids is kind of what we all do this for. This is my favorite little piece of paper that I have kept from the year. And this was actually found on a scrap piece of paper after the state test with one of the students that had taken the test. And it was actually one of my students. And he had written down that this was a fun test. And that's just the kind of kid that he was. He liked those tests. He enjoyed taking them. He enjoyed taking them so much that he decided he would challenge himself. And he actually scored 2 perfect test scores at the state meet in 2014 and 2015. Not only were they fun to him, he was very good at accounting and test taking. A lot of fun. Laverne really gets a kick out of some of the kids that she gets to know over the years. So what do I say about practice and practice and practice? Well, I say it's similar to the one-act play students. They keep practicing the same play over and over and over. So I thought about that a lot. And I thought, well, what could my kids do that would help them practice and get prepared for the meets as well as the UIL one act play. Well, I came up with an idea that I called packets. And what I did is I took Laverne's old test, because remember, they're all available on her website. And they're all Word documents. So I saved them all down and I broke the test down into topics, about 15 different topics. And I made packets, and I would take groups from different years, but I took questions that were related. So this packet was called Petty Cash and Change Fund. So there may be 6, there could be 80 questions in a variety of different years. They're all different. Don't ask me how she does it, but she can write questions that come at it from a different perspective. You think you've seen them all, and then she puts a little twist in there. So I made these packets, and we've used them in my program. I used them for probably 15 years. Also, I give my students a lot of handouts that are going to work with UIL. One of the handouts that we've used was for accounting organizations, because there are a variety of accounting organizations or organizations that have something to do with accounting. There are also a lot of names that aren't really accounting organizations. So the students and I would, as we read things, took tests, we kept adding bogus names as well to the bottom. As my kids worked through the practice material and practice tests, we actually kept a log. Created a log that listed all of the names of the packets, how many questions were in each packet, the handouts, all the names of all the handouts that were provided to provide support for the packets. And then on the back, the practice test that maybe we were going to use that year to practice with. So the kids would log their practice packets. They would keep track of the ones that they had done. And they would get coupons, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, because you're probably wondering what all these coupons are for. Well, we'll talk about that soon. We also used the Glencoe Competitive Event Review. You can purchase this book. They are true, false, or multiple choice questions in there. They're not the favorite of the students, I will admit that, but I will tell you that it gets their brain going, and it definitely gets those little bitty things into their heads. We often used 1 or 2 of these to warm up when we would get to a practice meet, because a lot of times, you know, it's a Saturday morning and they haven't done much accounting overnight. And then, of course, we would take a lot of practice tests. And again, we can get those from Laverne's website. So where'd that go? Sorry. So they can never take too many tests. That's just not a possibility. And so you want to make sure that your students are doing as much practice as they possibly can in different areas. It doesn't need to be, you know, doesn't need to be the same thing over and over. So this slide just talks about some insights that I gleaned from my students through the years, and then some things that I would require of my students through the years. During the fall, when we're practicing and going through practice tests and packets, I would normally have my kids go over anything that they missed, because if they don't go over it, they're going to continue to miss the same thing over and over and over. So it's really a good idea to sit down, watch them work the problem. So maybe you can figure out what it is that they're doing incorrect that would help guide them back to the right path. Let another student work the problem and let the other students watch. They can learn a lot from each other. And if they can work the problems out on the board or whatever, and other kids are watching, then it's going to teach shortcuts to different students, and it's going to increase everybody's capabilities. They do need to be introduced to the legibility code, which is at the bottom of the answer document on all the tests that they'll take through UIL. If there's any decisions to be made between their handwriting and what they actually wrote, they do use the legibility code. And one of the things that I used a lot, and I used it just in the classroom as well. A lot of these practice things, we used in the classroom because they're teaching the students, but we did a lot of flashcards. We had a stack of cards that had these account names on them, all of these account names on them. So you just had, use some cardstock, print them on your computer and cut them up and give a stack to a couple kids and let them sit there and work together. So then we would just do races just for fun. They would take the stack of cards. The first contest would be to divide the cards into a row of temporary accounts and a row of permanent accounts, or just stack them up. Then you could use those same cards and you could make the kids shuffle them up. We usually shuffled them up and passed them to somebody else, because then they would shuffle them up a lot better. And then they could use those same flashcards and they could divide the accounts into debit and credit accounts. So classification and then debit and credit balances, two really good practice things for the students. Using those same cards, you can then have them divide the cards into asset, liabilities, owner's equity, revenue, and expense. Continuing with those same flashcards, you could tell them that they need to visualize a worksheet as the year goes by and you progress more in your textbook. You could take the cards, same cards, and say, now you're on your worksheet. Decide which cards are going to go in the balance sheet columns. They're going to go on the debit or the credit side. Which cards are going to go in the income statement column. And again, just make it a race, make it fun, let them compete against each other. They could do the post-closing trial balance, look at the cards, decide which cards go in the post-closing trial balance, what would go in the debit column and which would go in the credit column. So flashcards are a really good thing. We had different sets of flashcards. You can also make flashcards for the formulas, for the really long financial statements, for calculating cost of goods sold, all those different calculations. We had flashcards and they'd have to put the cards in the right order to do the right calculation. Algebra equation, they definitely need to be solving for the unknown. One thing the students really were good at, we're not good at, but some of them were, they don't like percentages, but once they realized that 100% can be used to calculate cost of goods sold, if they know the gross profit is 40%, then they know that the other part is 60%, or if they know the other part is 60%, then they know the gross profit is 40%. So they can always take back ownership of a missing item if they go back to the 100% mark. The T account definitely should become their very, very best friend. And I teach using, or I taught using the T account. I made them explain problems using a T account. I use the T account when I'm talking to them, explaining something to them, and eventually they get that they have to use that T account. When they're working tests, they just need to be using that T account. It's just, it should be their best friend, and it should help them solve a lot of problems. A lot of the tests have really big sections that require a lot of reading. So one of the students that I had shared with the other students that one of the things that he did to make sure that he was using the information that he needed to is they would mark off the information as it's used. So as they read the problem and then they start answering the questions, they can mark off the information, they can put check marks, they can do whatever it is that works for them. And this problem from 2013 was a really interesting problem because all of the questions in the problem were asking about 9 of the 10 employees. It never asked about all of the employees. It kept asking about this employee, that employee, and it had touched on 9 of the employees. Well, when they get to the very last question, it asked for the total gross earnings for all 10 employees. Well, if they hadn't been marking information off, they probably thought they were through, that they had done all 10 employees. Well, if they had been marking off the information at that point, they would have still had 1 employee's information not marked off, and they would have realized that they had to do 1 more calculation. So it's really a good idea for them to either put check marks, mark things off, do whatever it is that they need to do to keep track of the information that they have used. One of the other things that's really hard for students to do is to skip a problem. They get to a group, they hit a roadblock, and they want to sit there. I guess they think they're going to have a great epiphany. They need to learn to move on, especially if it's a problem that they can tell it's a group problem and it's covering a concept that maybe they haven't gotten that far in class, or maybe it's something we just covered in class. Skip it, move on. There's going to be other questions they can answer later on in the test. They need to weigh the value. If they look at a problem and it's a lot of narrative and they can already tell this is about payroll and they don't do well with payroll, then skip it, move on. This is worth 2 5-point questions and 2 bonus questions. They might be able to pick up a lot more points by getting another section completed. So, and they can always come back to it later on. One of the hardest things though has been, I've noticed, is to get students to actually skip problems. For some reason, they want to work that test from top to bottom, even though they really don't need to do that. Motivators. So we've been working them to death. I mean, we've been having them do all kinds of things. We've done flashcards, we've done practice packs, we've done practice tests, we've done competitive events. We've just been working hard. So we need to motivate them. And teenagers are pretty easily motivated. When we did our packets, I bought a roll of these tickets and they got tickets. So they earned tickets, for different things. If they were a new student, they got more tickets than if they were a returning student who was redoing the packet. So the new kids had to work harder, so they got more tickets for doing a packet the first time. Returning students still needed the practice, so they still would get tickets for going through it. You can give them tickets for reading these information sheets, maybe ask them a couple questions. You can give them coupons for completing practice tests and scoring those practice tests. I just staple the tickets back on the packet or their test and give it back to them. So great, now they've got tickets. Well, what are you going to do with the tickets? Well, I can tell you one thing, they're always hungry. So my kids I had a tub that I just filled up with little bitty snack things, and they could get whatever snack they wanted for 5 coupons. It was just a motivator. It worked for my kids. We also had a wall chart where we listed all of the packets. And as they completed the packet and it was turned in and given back to them with their tickets, they were given stickers, and then they would add the stickers to this chart. This is a visual. It hangs in the classroom. So now you're competing a little bit of competition because it's a motivator to some kids. If they see other kids getting farther along than they are, then all of a sudden you might have the pace picked up by that kid. Past scores, you can send them to Laverne's website if they want to look at those. I would keep past scores for my kids just so they can see how our school is competitive, give them something to work towards. They would have notebooks that they could keep all their material in. I just had a supply of a bunch of used notebooks. Give them those notebooks, let them get stickers, let them put their name on it, anything like that to keep their accounting material easily accessible no matter where they are. It does take commitment from the team members. It takes commitment from the coach. These kids are busy. They're involved in a lot of different things, a lot of different activities. So at the beginning of the year, usually I would give them a memo that let them know what they might be looking at if they decided to work in accounting, how many invitational meets they would be needing to commit to compete in if they wanted to try to be a team member. Once we got through with all the invitational meets and we were ready to start our district and actually pick our team, then you send out another note to make sure these kids realize the district date, the region date, and the state date, because there can be conflicts. These kids are involved in a lot of activities, and you don't want at the last minute to have a kid come up and say he can't go, which we actually had happen right before a state meet. Student had been working so hard, he was doing so well, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, he realized he had another commitment with the band trip that was going to conflict with the state meet. His parents had already put money into the band trip, so he had to attend it. So he was pretty disappointed. We were disappointed, but we always pick 6 on our team. So we had another kid that stepped up, but it was just a big disappointment and probably a little bit unnecessary. I learned that year. So the next year is when I started sending out a new memo and made their parents sign it as well so that everybody knew the dates. Again, the kids are busy. So I like to do a lot of practice. I know they can't all practice at the same time, and I was probably one of those crazy people. I made myself pretty available for the kids pretty much all of the time. So they would have a calendar that was in my room. They would sign up when they wanted to come to practice. So sometimes it was 1 kid, sometimes it was 3 kids. It just depended on what time of day fit their schedule that day. And it was just a time where they could, bring their questions again, work as a team. One of the kids could work a problem that another kid might be having a problem with. But once they put their name on the schedule, it was really surprising because they were they felt very accountable. Once they'd written their name down, they rarely did not show up. You can remind them, use whatever kind of software it is that you use to talk to your students. And then, of course, you need to celebrate. I mean, these kids put a lot of work. In our classrooms, I was able to hang, all kinds of things. I mean, we had picture posters that we made after the end of each year. We had big pictures that the district had printed this when the students won the first state meet. Trophies we would put on the wall. If we go to the state meet, get a t-shirt, have the kids sign it. It's a good keepsake. Just all over the classroom, just every year, they looked forward to the poster being made. They felt like they would always be there, which of course they're not going to always be there. But we had t-shirts. The school, of course, most schools do, but the kids like to see those hanging up on the walls. So it's a lot of fun, just to keep the kids motivated. Do different things in your classroom. You figure out what works for you. Get them involved. A lot of them like to help do this kind of stuff, but they do like to see it. They definitely like to see it. They love to see pictures of themselves. We all know that. You want to feel like a rock star. What does it take from you to make them feel like that? I was blessed to work with an awesome administration. If you can take the time to get to know your administration, find out which administrator is connected to your UIL program and work with him. Our administration actually let us do a rally in the fall to get kids interested and motivated to become part of the UIL academic program. We published pictures on our school's webpage. We sent things to the newspapers. We hung up things in the classrooms. We sent announcements in after every meet. So the administration would announce those to the host school. We sent emails to our staff with all the winners, because if they had those kids in their classrooms, they would recognize that kid during that class. Our school board was very supportive of the program. And in the spring, they would always want the kids advancing to region and state to be spotlighted at one of the meetings. We had an administrator who was just very supportive of the program. We had banners that hung in our common area, so all the kids in the school could see all of the kids if they had won. We had a banquet in the spring, again, just recognizing the kids, just like an athletic banquet, but it was a UIL academic banquet, and the parents came, and it really became a very popular event in the spring. Of course, we did t-shirts, and the kids could earn their letter jackets from there as well. And that is all that I have. So I am going to stop sharing, I think. All right.
Thank you, Susan.
You're welcome.
That was great, great, helpful information. I loved all your accounting stuff, but especially all just your tips about how to prepare students and recognize their work.
That's the fun part.
No matter how many times you hear it or have somebody hear somebody's ideas, it's always refreshing and makes me miss getting out there and doing it myself. So hopefully the same for some of these teachers on this session today. Right. Tina asked, would this presentation be available? And it is on the Capital Conference online site. The link is in the chat box, as well as in the email with the links you have to the session. So I want to do one last call for any questions from Susan. If not, I want to thank you, Susan, for presenting, and we appreciate all that you do.
Okay, well, I enjoy it.